I just found this. There's quite a story about internees from 1942 to 1945. It says. So it basically describes how the Nikkei farmers of Japanese descent or Japanese nationals who lived in the U.S. Were evolving economically and doing pretty well. So they were doing pretty well right before World War II. And then there was a executive order issued, number 9066, authorizing the forced removal of all persons of Japanese ancestry along the west coast. So 110,000 people were removed. Women, men, elderly, children, citizen and non-citizen were all evicted from their homes into 10 concentration camps in isolated areas of American interior from 42 to 45. Of course, people tried to fight for the Japanese-American civil rights, motivated by race prejudice, work hysteria, and failure of political leadership. They said that internment was a violation of those rights. People from Silicon Valley, Santa Clara Valley, Nikkei, people lived in Wyoming area at the concentration camp, and other people of other nationalities and citizens took over their land, settling Nihonmachi, which is here, Nihonmachi area, Japantown. And then San Jose, Morgan Hills, Santa Clara passed resolutions in 1943 opposing the return of Nikkei to the valley. However, despite that sentiment, Nikkei still returned to San Jose and Santa Clara to rebuild their lives and their community. So it's pretty interesting. They still came back and they thought that it was unjust treatment of Japanese Americans who already lived here versus in Japan. Here's when they were leaving the Heart Mountain, I guess in Wyoming, already probably coming back to the Nihonmachi area, or maybe don't know they were living where. Not very clear in the picture. There's some farming in Wyoming. By the way, I had a chance to visit Wyoming in 1996, I believe. Hang out with some real cowboys. I should make a video about that too. And then this talking about Obon religious festival. Despite the fact that Japanese culture was viewed as anti-American. And then at the same time, thousands of Japanese Americans served with a great distinction in the US forces during World War II. It's an irony, right? Even though their people were sent to the concentration camp, they were still serving in the military. So here's another story about pioneers. So the one on the left,
yeah,
the one on the left is your grandma.
Early 1900, I guess.
I'm just filming about Japantown, and we live in San Francisco, so we have a Japantown there. But I didn't know there's such a great looking one here. Earlier, I just interviewed another Japanese American on the street. He says his uncle, sumo wrestler, is there as well. So she's among the first comers?
Oh, yeah. She came here. I don't know. My grandpa came here about 1901, so she came after that.
Wow, because it mentions that a lot of single men came first.
Yeah, late 1800 to early 1900s.
But they didn't intermarry, right? It wasn't allowed at that time, probably.
No.
Right? So how they had to wait for Japanese women to come join them?
Yeah.
Oh.
They were picture brides. They send the pictures back home, and
and then later they could join at some point. So did she tell you stories about that life?
Not much.
No.
But I only knew her for a few years before she passed away. So
you were a small kid, probably, right?
Was that?
You were a small kid when she passed away?
Anyway, I was in Japan.
Oh.
And she was over here.
Oh, you were in Japan.
Yeah, that's right. I was born in Japan.
So you were actually born in Japan.
When I came over here, she was pretty old anyway, so only a few years before she passed away.
So that means her children went to Japan. That's how you were born in there.
Two daughters were sent over to Japan.
Oh.
And the boys were back here to get a Japanese education.
And this is your family too?
My daughter. She's a fourth generation, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, I watched some blogs about Japan, people who live in Japan now, and very interesting culture. So wow, what a story.
Where you from?
I'm from Russia.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm from Russia myself, but I watch NHK World as well a lot. There's an app
yeah.
you can watch.
Yeah.
Some Japanese people were laughing at me like, oh, you know, it's kind of government channel. I think the biggest one, but I think they have good programs there about culture, about artisans, about some things we wouldn't know otherwise. Wow. Any other interesting stories?
No.
What happened? Anybody was affected by internment?
Yeah. My grandma, grandpa, and my aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
And
They were all.
one of my uncle was in a boot camp when he passed away. Before he was sent over to Europe. A lot of Japanese Americans went to Europe. They were sent over to fight the Germans.
Oh, the gentleman there told me a similar story that even if you are sent to internment, you had the choice to join the army, but your family still stays in the camp, which is kind of sad, right? They don't. It's like they have to prove that they are so American. They're still sacrificing themselves. That family is still there.
Yeah.
I never realized they're called concentration camps. They are?
Well, because they had a armed guard tower, so barbed wire, so it's a concentration camp.
So it's more like a prison, right? In a way,
Yeah.
prison, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, nice talking to you.
Thank you. So this story here describes how mostly single Japanese men formed a Japantown in San Jose, and they formed Nihonmachi. It's a Japantown, and it catered to the needs of bachelor society with boarding houses, bathhouses, which is onsen in Japanese, pool halls, gambling establishments, etc. And then later women were arriving in as well, as the gentleman mentioned, so men could marry the women of Japanese descent, or Japanese women actually born in Japan. And then again, different acts prevented Nikkei farmers from even first generation, which is called Issei. They could not purchase land or rent land even. So families struggled to work on the land mainly as tenants or sharecroppers. I guess unless they're second generation, then they become citizens and etc. So a lot of limitations people faced, a lot of struggles they went through. So I had a very, very interesting conversation with a gentleman who was born in Japan and came back to the US later on. He shared the story and he said that's his grandma in the picture. You will see that video. I'm curious if he is the one, his congressman that was on the radio yesterday. Well, maybe not. But looks like some prominent gentleman. So, here is another story. So one of those sumo wrestlers here is the relative of a gentleman with whom I spoke earlier. He's his uncle. It's his uncle. Gentleman who is, who told me about his parents being sent to the camp. So I've been reading some stories here mentioned on the list. It talks about the exclusion of Japanese American community, and Japanese were prohibited from immigrating to the US even. In 1924 there was an act, and they were self-contained community because of widespread discrimination, prejudice against Nikkei people. So they talk about different sports, sumo, some baseball and other activities and events. Produce sake, rice wine, etc. So they try to persist and have their own community and culture evolve and develop in this area.